You know if Celeste was ever at that property?
So, of what we recovered, we don't have any of her at the property. We have pictures of her and that were taken by David, we assume, because it's not on a camera phone, but these photos are on a regular camera at different locations. And it really makes me think that it's likely she had another place she was staying. I can tell you that there was a lot of time spent towards downtown LA. And I'll say the last photo that we have of Celeste is January 2nd, 2025.
Investigators are finally closing in on David, and what they're uncovering is straight out of a horror story. Evidence now links him directly to Celeste, and even worse, some of it points to her death being disturbingly cruel. But get this, new names are popping up too. David's close friend Mio might have been in on it the whole time, possibly helping him cover everything up while pretending to be innocent. This story just got way darker. Remember when the mansion owner, the one whose property David was staying in, decided to step in and run their own investigation? Well, that decision might have just cracked the case wide open. They brought in a private investigator, and while it's not fully confirmed if it's Steve Fisher, he's been deep in this case from the jump and seems to know exactly who's guilty and who's not. According to Steve, the reason David hasn't been arrested yet is because there's more than one person involved. He says this whole thing is layered, and we're about to look at one of his interviews where he spills even more shocking details. In the clip, Steve explains that Celeste wasn't just staying at the mansion. She was bouncing between several of David's rental properties. That's wild. And here's the most chilling part. Steve admits that at first, he thought this was just an overdose gone wrong, something they tried to hide to keep the relationship secret.
Thought this was going to be a tragic overdose, which it very well still could be, and they made a bad decision because they didn't want to expose a potential relationship and put her in this Tesla, and then maybe he thought he could get somebody to get rid of that car, and they were just like, no, I'm not doing it, and just got left there. But I will say this, there are some things that, and I'm talking physical evidence that was at that house that is, there could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her, and it's scary sadistic stuff. And that's why we're trying to learn more about that. I wish I could say more, but for obvious reasons I can't. But it doesn't have to do with how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot at time, and things just, their timing was just off as far as getting this done. But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind.
But now it's looking way darker than that. Something truly sinister might have gone down. So apparently, they didn't just panic and dump the body, they planned it. They worked together, making twisted choices that turned this whole thing into something straight up disturbing. Steve says it's much darker than anyone imagined, like some kind of humiliation ritual that went way too far. It's like they were feeding off the chaos, and that's just sick. Now here's where it gets even more mind-blowing. Steve uncovered details that point to something sadistic. And that word means finding pleasure in someone else's pain or suffering. So what were they really planning to do with Celeste's body? That's the question haunting everyone right now. David gives off such creepy energy, and seeing him flashing those knives on his live streams makes people's skin crawl. It's hard not to wonder what exactly went down that night. There's a growing theory that the reason nobody's behind bars yet is because it's not just David. It's a whole group of people being investigated. The police are quietly piecing together a bigger puzzle before making any arrests. And honestly, that makes sense because this case is messy and deep. But one thing's for sure, things are finally moving. The landlord's decision to bring in that private investigator might have just been the key to cracking it all open. Steve says he's already obtained surveillance footage showing a Tesla being driven just moments before it was mysteriously abandoned. And that's a huge breakthrough. Justice might finally be catching up with them. Steve's newest findings are absolutely chilling. The person seen driving the Tesla in the footage doesn't even match the earlier descriptions, which means someone else might have been behind the wheel that night. The video, dated July 29th, could end up being the key that connects everything, from the car's movements to who handled it right before it got impounded. And it's not just video evidence either.
Breaking news, they now know who was driving David's Tesla right before Celeste's body was discovered inside of the frunk. The owner of the Hollywood home that David was renting has hired a private investigator. That private investigator has now uncovered surveillance footage from July 29th showing an individual driving the Tesla. They also mentioned the individual that moved the Tesla from one point to another rolled down the window when it was only 77 degrees out roughly. They also hung an air freshener from the front and rear view mirror. The private investigator said that the video was so clear and that the individual drove right past the camera, therefore he was able to see very clearly who was in the vehicle. The private investigator said, quote, "The Tesla comes very close to a camera, although there is some motion blur." They continued by saying, quote, "But you can see the person." They go on to state that the individual driving was also wearing something very distinctive, and that the private investigator was able to obtain video from 12 hours earlier showing that same person at the home wearing the same thing.
Tesla app data, phone records, and timestamps are all being reviewed right now, and if this tech trail lines up, it could blow the entire case wide open.
However, due to investigative purposes, they will not disclose whom that individual is, or their relation to the singer David. The investigator also said that there is a chance the person driving the vehicle was simply asked to move it and may have had no idea that Celeste was in the trunk. The investigator said, quote, "I find it very hard to believe if that's the case, but just in case, I'd like the LAPD to make that announcement."
Steve even said if it helps build the timeline or shows who Celeste was last seen with, both prosecutors and defense attorneys will fight over it. That's how serious this evidence is. But here's where it gets darker. Steve confirmed there was disturbing, sadistic evidence found at one of the properties, suggesting a major cover-up attempt. Still, he admitted there's no hard proof yet that Celeste was harmed inside that home, which only adds more mystery to this nightmare. Now, some rumors floating around online are beyond horrifying. People are claiming Celeste actually lived with David across 2 different rentals about a mile apart in the Hollywood Hills. That lines up with parts of what Steve said, though according to him, the property was closer to downtown, not Hollywood Hills. So either there's confusion or someone's trying to throw people off the trail. But here's the most disturbing part. Whispers say her body might have been mutilated and kept hidden in a freezer for weeks, maybe even months, while David went on tour. That's unthinkable. Steve revealed that the last confirmed photo of Celeste was taken back in January, yet her family insists they were in contact with her all the way up until July. So who were they really talking to? Could someone have been pretending to be Celeste to cover up what really happened? This case just keeps getting darker by the minute. Steve took to Twitter and dropped a bombshell that got everyone talking. He said, "Let's speculate that the Tesla was moved one last time before it was left in that parking spot where it was later impounded, right before the San Francisco tour started."
We now know who was driving David's Tesla right before Celeste's body was found. So the guy that owns the house that David was staying in hired a private investigator, and that private investigator has found new evidence in the form of security footage that was from July 29th, where you can clearly see somebody driving the Tesla. Where in this new footage, you can see that the person that is driving the Tesla rolls down the window and puts up an air freshener. And this is where it gets even more worser. The private investigator says that in the security camera footage, you can clearly see the person that is driving the car, and that this person is wearing something extremely distinctive, and that the person driving David's Tesla was wearing the same thing 12 hours earlier when they were caught on camera. However, this is where it gets even more insaner. Private investigator is playing this very smartly. The person in this video might have just been somebody that was asked to move the Tesla, and that this person may have not known that there was a body in the car, but that the private investigator finds that hard to believe. However, this is where it gets even more sadder, as they cannot disclose who this person's was, and that on July 29th, within minutes of David's Tesla being parked for the final time, David's tour bus came to pick him up. Now, this is all alleged.
Now that raises a serious question. Who moved the Tesla that final time? Steve's message was clear. You don't get answers unless you ask questions. And one of those big questions is, was it Neo? Let's break down who Neo really is, because his name keeps coming up. Neo wasn't just some random friend. He was David's shadow, always there, always close. He called himself David's personal assistant. But insiders claim their relationship seemed way deeper than just professional. Some even whispered that Neo was like David's partner on the side, which might explain why he always seemed so protective and secretive around him. There are countless photos of David and Neo together, lounging, traveling, laughing, like they were inseparable. And here's the wild part. Neo definitely knew who Celeste was. There are pictures and even video calls showing him chatting with her, which means he wasn't just watching from the sidelines. He was in this circle. But lately, Neo's been moving real suspicious. On Instagram, he's unfollowed David and wiped every single photo of them together, trying to erase the whole friendship overnight. People online are calling it a panic move, a desperate attempt to disconnect himself from the mess now that the investigation is heating up. One user even pointed out that if David had been the one who moved that Tesla, he'd already be sitting behind bars. But he's not. So that leaves us wondering, did Neo take the wheel that night? Or is there another player hiding in plain sight? The plot just keeps getting thicker. From everything that's been uncovered lately, it really looks like someone else moved that car. Not David. The case is still wide open, and with no arrests so far, investigators are scrambling for solid proof about what really happened to Celeste and how she lost her life. But here's where it gets complicated. People are starting to question the dynamic between David and Neo. Their relationship seems deeper than just friends or co-workers, and it's sparking all kinds of speculation online. Some think David might be bisexual, based on how close he and Neo were, and the kind of things they used to say to each other online. The comments they left are raising eyebrows, like Neo writing, "I'm never letting go. You are always beautiful, David. That's not your typical friend talk." And then David replied with a single word, healed. What was he healing from? Because honestly, nobody in this situation seems healed at all. Things got even stranger when people dug up an anime-style music video David posted around August 5th. In it, there's a scene with an Asian male, a black male who looks almost exactly like David, and a woman caught between them. It's giving symbolism. And Neo even jumped into the comments calling David senpai, which in anime slang means crush. The timing? Way too suspicious. This video dropped right after everything started spiraling at the end of July, which feels like more than coincidence. And to make it weirder, based on photos David posted, Neo was seen at David's home around July, the exact period when Celeste reportedly disappeared. Could the video have been a coded message? Or was it David's twisted way of expressing something that actually happened? The lines between art, confession, and cover-up are starting to blur, and the timing makes it all even harder to ignore. According to Steve's interview with News Nation, the video he uncovered was recorded on July 29th, the exact same day the Tesla was last seen being moved. And guess who was together that day? David and Neo. That detail alone is shaking everything up because it places both of them right at the center of the timeline. When people started calling Neo out, he finally broke his silence. But his response only made things worse. He posted, "Yeah, eventually I'm gonna say something, but I kinda hate forcing myself into solitude because people on the internet assume the worst and make up anything out of nothing. I'll talk when I'm ready. Love to the real ones who don't make false assumptions." Sounds calm, right? But the internet wasn't having it. Folks were furious that he called everything nothing, when we're talking about a missing woman and a possible murder. People started calling his tone cold and sociopathic, because who brushes something like that off so casually? One user online even listed several times Neo was spotted at David's place. April 18th, June 1st, June 6th, July 8th, and July 27th, all within the same period leading up to Celeste's disappearance. Some believe there were even more visits that got deleted from his feed. The comments online are brutal. People saying, "Main character syndrome, the lot of them." That's what it takes to dump the body of a girl you supposedly loved and not even have the decency to pay for her funeral. It's dark, but it shows just how angry the public is getting. Now, let's walk through a clearer timeline. On March 8th, the lease for one of David's rental properties, the same one Celeste was allegedly staying at, was terminated. No one knows if she moved in with him afterward or if something happened before then. But things took a strange turn again on July 20th, when police were called to David's Vireo Drive property after neighbors reported loud music and commotion. Could that night have been connected to what happened next? Every new detail makes this case look even more suspicious, and the pressure on both David and Neo is building fast. So here's where the timeline gets downright eerie. On July 27th and 28th, David and Neo were seen partying like nothing was wrong. But then on July 29th, everything changed. That was the last time David's Tesla was moved, and the whole thing was caught on surveillance. The person behind the wheel was wearing clothes that made them instantly recognizable. And right after that moment, they jumped on tour. People are convinced it was Neo. The very next day, July 30th, David hit the stage for his San Francisco show, acting like everything was perfectly normal. But what creeped everyone out was his outfit. A Hello Kitty sweatshirt with the words Divine Celestial written across it. Fans immediately caught the connection. Celestial sounds almost identical to Celeste's name. The symbolism was chilling. People online started speculating that it wasn't just a coincidence, that maybe it was a twisted tribute or part of some dark, symbolic message tied to the whole situation. Then, on July 31st, clips surfaced showing David and Neo together again, hanging out backstage at the show, completely unbothered, like nothing had happened. Neo was right there beside him the entire time, which makes everything even more suspicious. Steve, the investigator, later broke down this exact moment in an interview, saying, "What I can tell you is that right when the Tesla was moved there, the tour bus was waiting to leave. From the time the Tesla was left there, immediately the tour bus took off." That's a direct quote, and it's unsettling. Think about it. The Tesla gets dropped off, the tour bus pulls away instantly, and both David and Neo are suddenly miles away performing on stage. The timing is too perfect to be random. It's like everything was choreographed to hide something huge, and the way it all lined up has everyone asking, was this really coincidence or a carefully planned cover-up? Now back to the timeline. Things only get murkier from here. On August 1st, David was performing in Arizona. Then by August 2nd, he was already back in California, continuing his tour like nothing ever happened. Meanwhile, Neo suddenly vanished from public sight after August 8th, leaving everyone wondering what went down between them. But then, just 2 days later, on August 10th, he popped up again in Los Angeles at a birthday party, acting carefree like the whole case wasn't even hanging over his head. By August 27th, the story took another strange turn. Reports show David and Neo were spotted partying with a group of influencers, all smiles, while David's Tesla was being marked by authorities as potentially abandoned. Imagine that, your car's about to get towed as evidence, and you're out there drinking and laughing for the cameras. That's beyond suspicious. Then, between August 29th and 30th, a photographer named Maximilian posted pictures from Tara Yummy's debut show. And guess who was there again? David, surrounded by familiar faces from his inner circle. People online are convinced David had a close connection with Tara Yummy, and the timing of those interactions has everyone feeling uneasy. Something about it just doesn't sit right, especially considering what was happening behind the scenes during those same dates. Throughout this entire timeline, one thing stays consistent. Neo was constantly by David's side before the tour, almost daily. He was seen at multiple California tour dates, but strangely missing in other states. That detail alone raises questions. Could Neo have stayed back to handle something? Because based on his location, he can't be ruled out as the one who moved the Tesla before David went on tour, or possibly again before it was flagged on August 27th. And as for David's whereabouts now, nobody seems to know. The only person still speaking for him is his high-profile attorney, Blair Burke. And that silence from David says a whole lot without saying anything at all. So yeah, David is still walking free, and that's what's got everyone on edge right now. After everything that's come out, the fact that he hasn't been taken in yet feels unreal. Investigators have all this footage, digital data, and witnesses, but no one's in cuffs? That's wild. And honestly, I'm not just hoping for one arrest, I'm hoping for arrests. Plural. Because there's no way this whole thing went down with just one person pulling the strings. Lock them all up and let justice finally do its job. This latest update gives me a little more hope that the truth is getting closer. The walls are closing in, and sooner or later somebody's going to crack. But now I want to hear from you. What do you think about this case? Do you think David's days of freedom are numbered, or is someone protecting him from behind the scenes? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget, hit that like, share, and subscribe button for more wild celebrity drama and real-time updates on stories just like this. I'll see you in the next one, and make sure you stick around to watch the next video that's about to pop up on your screen. Trust me, it's even messier than this one.